Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming here. My name is Ying, and I will be giving a short talk about bridging the gap between gender, industry, and culture. Um, Before I start, just a really quick question from you guys. Who is supportive? Who here, raise your hands if you're supportive of diversity. Okay, so I pretty much see the whole room. Not the whole room, though. I know there are people who are invested in this topic, there are people who are not so much, and there are people who are still trying to consider and define what diversity means. And I cannot blame the latter group. Our modern identity today is pretty complex. It's not tied to a singular nationality, gender identity, industry, and so forward. And I'm the first to know. I was born in Shanghai. I grew up in Finland, and I've lived in 8 cities across 3 different continents. My background comes from everything from business to social impact to startups to intergovernmental organizations. Each and every party speaks a very different language. And very often, I've found that we all seek the same things, but we just speak a very different language in this. And be it female entrepreneurship or be it whatever industry, it touches absolutely everything. So I'm the co-founder of Future Urban Living. And what we do is we design circular solutions for businesses and cities within the frame of circular economy. So those of you who are familiar with the concept, it's all about regenerating, redesigning, reimagining material usage and looping the cycle. We call it closing the loop. And when we talk about something like this, it's fundamentally about the whole ecosystem, right? Not just one player doing one thing, but multiple different stakeholders doing something together. So just a quick one on circular economy, what it is. And my main point is that working on challenges this scale and this complexity, we have to collaborate with different industries and we have to speak different languages, otherwise it doesn't work. We work with macro level, meso level, micro level. They all represent different things and we have to look at the whole cycle from end user to the decision makers. And what I've found across all my experience in these years is that all industries and cultures and groups carry very deeply rooted perceptions, and they're very often misunderstood. And this is something that I like to call invisible glass facades. I've also done research on female leadership, and I'm specifically interested in what we call the leaking pipeline effect, meaning that water goes in from one end of the pipe, and that's about 50-50 or 60-40, depending on how you look at it. And then on the leadership part, where the water is supposed to come out, it only comes out in little drops. This is called the leaking water pipeline effect. And that's very interesting in terms of female leadership, especially because water goes in and then only a few drops come out. And I've done studies on where does the water in between go? Where does the water leak into? And very often, not just gender, but all kinds of diversity, all kinds of industries, there are these invisible barriers and invisible facades. And very often they come from us trying to say something and do something, but the opposite party not understanding and not getting the message. Many Western brands today fail to enter the Chinese market where we operate today, not because we lack market opportunities or business opportunities, but simply because they lack deeper understanding and nuances. It's very difficult. We don't see forests from the trees. This is what I like to say. And what this means is that we see singular things. A lot of our modern science is based on this today. We take singular things, put them in a glass jar, study them, and forget the contextual behind it. What do I mean? If we want to power youth in entrepreneurship today, then decision makers need to also consider the risk that these young people are taking in order to innovate socioeconomically, right? And if we want to get, this is my field, environmentalists to be heard about climate change, about circular economy within the space of business, then we also need to understand that business executives, what drives their decision-making power is profit and it's cash. And it's very directly this way. And this is a debate and this is a discussion that I very often have with people from across different industries. It's not so much about blaming fingers or you're doing the right thing, you're not doing the right thing, or business is evil and so forward. But it's really about understanding the whole system, how everyone operates in. And if we want to empower women in business world, then we equally need to talk about male empowerment in home or everywhere else. Because, you know, about this leaking pipeline effect, when we just study the business world, it is very easy to say that, hey, Fortune 500 companies, only 3% are women and so forward, but we also need to understand the whole ecosystem behind it. In order for women to be and feel empowered in the corporate world, that, by the way, was built by men to men through history, then we also need to consider the homebound for men and how we empower that. And this is a very interesting topic because in terms of gender, I don't look at it so much in biological terms, but more of a identity, so feminine identity, masculine identity. And recent phenomenon about female empowerment is something I'm quite invested in myself, and I'm a big fan of, that we raise awareness on this. But at the same time, I feel like a masculine identity is something that I've surprisingly caught myself speaking more for over the past years. And I don't think we pay enough attention to it. Simply because it just hasn't had so much light in the media. And I've had some interesting results in my studies as well. So in my research on this leaking pipeline effect, we studied 40,000 people across and interviewed people over 11 different countries. And one interesting phenomenon is what I found: top leaders, the most successful people, have got to their place without really seeing any invisible barriers, what we call glass ceilings or glass walls or whatever we want to call them. And that has led me to ask the question, is it because they did not see these barriers in the first place that got them there? Or because they got there and they were fairly successful in their endeavors that made them not see that? And that's a question that I sometimes think, if I had a daughter, how would I raise her? Would I raise her to know that the playfield might be unfair in some ways, or would I want to raise her to just not know about things? And this is an interesting question, and my message is not that we need to be clueless and ignorant about things, but more that we should lead with curiosity. We should ask questions and no assumptions. And this is to say that nuances really do matter in everything we do across cultures, across industries, across gender talks. I don't think female entrepreneurship, female leadership is such an easy topic that we just push and it's there. And to make real impact, we first need to make sure that our messages are first being heard. So this is to conclude that leading by curiosity is the most important and not by assumptions. Thank you. And I would like to take a few questions from you guys. Thank you.
And I can help you with the microphone probably. If there's a microphone for the audience, then. And a good thing is, yeah, there's somebody who has his hand. Yeah, no worries. Hi.
Hi, my name is Teresa. I'm
Hello.
from Bangkok, from Thailand. I come from National Innovation Agency. I want to touch upon what you talk about, the identity of masculinity, because what I feel that once we emphasize, for example, about female entrepreneurship, that's in a way it is sexism. It's like we're trying to promote that it is supposed to be stress or something like that, right? So that's one way to look at it, listening from the other panel before. But what I want to reflect is that I feel that most of the female leaderships have this masculinity identity or character in them. And that's how they win their cases, that's how they thrive, and that's how they're have this passion, and also how they decide things, their decision making. It's more masculine than feminine, as you said. And I want to touch upon that to ask your opinion, how we can promote that more, how we can, because we say when we as leader, we do things manly. We say win or lose or win-win or whatsoever. We will stress that, we think like a man. You understand? Yeah. So how can we promote that? Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a very good question. So it is true, and I echo very much what you say. And as I said before, across my studies, the business world today is built by men to men, right? Because of historical context. Genders, women and men, historically had very different roles. We are different. I'm not trying to put us in the same glass jar and say men and women are the same, because we simply are not, and we shouldn't think of it that way either. We should embrace that, right? So from that context, now women are put into this world, given these options, equality. We should have the same rights to, work and excel and all that. Yes, but we're still quite young in this phenomenon, and therefore I think the masculine identity in the business world today still drives a lot of it. Another thing I want to touch upon is called critical number and critical mass. So there are countries that force women, X amount of women in the board, and people have a lot of different opinions about this. Some criticize and some agree with it. The point behind this is to reach a critical number. So in a boardroom of 10 guys, if you have one woman, this is not my opinion, but according to studies, it's that one woman, if they start crying, then all women cry. She's a token, she represents a gender by doing something that is different. If there are two, then that already changes the game. And the critical mass happens at 3. This is what the discipline has been studying and saying. And in my own experience, it very much is that when you bring more diversity in the room and just get people used to different conversations, it changes, but very slowly. I personally think this modern type of female empowerment is still so new that we also need to give men a couple of decades to think what's happening. And this is not to say that I'm not putting importance on it, but really to digest that, okay, what does this mean to the whole society now that women are in the workforce and women are leaders? How do they lead? And thirdly, I would say that the challenges that we're facing today in climate change, in urban migration, everything are so complex that we simply just need to radically collaborate. And that's something that traditionally feminine identity and feminine futures are pretty strong at.
Hi, Lou.
Please stand up.
Hi, Lulu. She's a friend of mine, and she gave me great advice on women leadership and just to bring into the audience. I think there is a shift. I agree. The world is becoming more collaborative, where things are moving faster and innovation can drive. At the same time, we have this old hierarchical system where it's male-dominated, or where it's coming from, and it's an exciting phase of transition. Do you have any recommendations for people that want to drive collaborative approaches in a female-influenced way, but being in this transitional phase, like to how you can, you have tips for the day-to-day business related to collaborative approaches? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, be curious, ask questions, just no assumptions. No assumptions between industries, no assumptions between genders. And this sounds very simple, and everyone knows this. But in reality, we don't ask enough questions, and we assume way too much. I see Western businesses coming to Chinese market every day, assuming that because Chinese market acts this way. If I give my business card with both hands, we will do business together. No, that's not enough, right? There are a lot of things behind it. Do not assume. So industries as well, business people, I work between environmentalistic side and more business side. And environmentalistic side is very much focused on climate, what's best for the world, and I very much agree that ideologically it's a very important discussion, and this is why we're doing what we're doing. But then on the business side, as long as we have this capitalistic system, we also need to understand how businesses make profit every day. So it's a curiosity-driven conversation. I think I'm out of time.
No, we'll continue. It's too interesting. So please stand up.
Hello,
Okay, thank you.
I'm very happy to be here. My name is Goran Mormon from Berlin. I'm a German woman. And I'm very happy that you all here from Asia. So in the morning I had the idea to come over, and I have a clinic and praxis in Berlin. I'm natural healer. So normally it's not my subject to go to technical events, but I have a special therapy system of healing, so I'm going worldwide with my company Time Weaver. And I have a huge group of women. I just come to the subject. And I, since years, I train them for leadership, women for leadership worldwide. So I really asking you if you really up to the subject that women are equal in your business. So I experienced that women are quite equal in German already.
Thank you. So if I understood correctly, your question is, do I feel women are equal in my business, or in the business I understand? So I grew up in Finland. This is very contextual. It's very relative to where we are. Finland is very equal, yes. When I went into when I studied female empowerment in my master's, my first question was is this still a topic we need to study? You know, isn't this like an old topic already? Then I got deeper into it and realized that, oh, we do need to study it. It is very interesting. Change is happening, but it's very slow. So depending on where we look at it, right? Finland is very equal. Europe, Western Europe in general, I would say, on the surface level, I agree, is very equal. Under the surface level, I would actually raise a little bit of questions. There are a lot of structural things still happening. I do not see so much inequality with members, men and women, entering the workforce, but especially after the middle layers, I do see a little bit of difference. And I don't necessarily say it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, but I just think we need to be curious about what happens in there, right? And very often, if you, as a woman or man, decide to have kids, that's where the middle years happen. And across cultures, this is something that women just take more care, time, commitment, energy, whatever you want to call it, option, force, that just happens. And anyone that is out of the workforce, by choice or not choice, for X amount of years, it will affect your resume, your career advancements, and so forward, right? So I think to bring that on the table, it does make sense in some ways. In China, where I am right now, and Shanghai is, again, very different from the rest of the China, I feel very empowered, to be honest. I feel very empowered. I took over our family business at age 28. And it's a multi-million-dollar business, and I became the CEO. First question in the board meeting, I was asked, how old are you? The same week, I go to the barber shop and cut my hair to look older, which is silly, but it is just something I did. So I'm very aware of these things, and I mentally was prepared for more discrimination, invisible discrimination, but I really did not feel that, I have to say, from my own experience. Actually, quite opposite. I think it's due to the fact that there are a lot of, our generation is the one-child policy generation. So both women, daughters and sons, especially in first-tier city areas. The Shanghainese women are, I think, very empowered.
So I have one more question here, and there's, okay, there are two more questions. Okay, those are then the final three, otherwise it
Okay.
run too much out of time, but those three I will allow. So
I'll try to be concise.
Thank you.
My name is Manal Asad. I'm a digital marketing consultant and entrepreneur. I've been in the entrepreneurial, basically, scene with a lot of female entrepreneurs for a while. So there are always these concerns, basically, that when do we stop being female entrepreneurs and start just being entrepreneurs? You know, it's my concern as well. You know, when I want to go into a business meeting or such, I want to be seen as an entrepreneur, not a female entrepreneur. And I want to reiterate on some of the points that you shared about male empowerment, basically to bring work-life balance to the males as well, not to the females. So wanting to take time off work is not seen as a female thing, you know, like you want to take years off and it would hold you back, or you feel awkward because you want to take time off but not be seen, you know, like as a not taking your business as serious. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the men here would appreciate a more relaxed work environment where, you know, like you can have time for your family, even if you're single, to travel, to, you know, enjoy the world and etc., without being seen as you're not taking your business as serious. So I just want to know, you know, like your opinion on that. How do you see the future, you know, like to bringing more balance to the males, not just the females, and putting less focus on the female entrepreneurship? Yes.
Very long introduction of the question, and then
Yes.
a question that's very broad. I want to know
Yes.
what your biggest fear is when it comes to like the future of female leadership or leadership as such. What is your biggest fear?
Yes, what I said is that I want to be able to have sort of flexibility in work-life balance without it being seen as a female trait.
Okay, stop. So, and how does she see this?
Yes, basically, you know, like, do we see initiatives going to that direction? Is it something you're working on?
Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you. That is a very good question. I think it will naturally go there, but it just takes time. So I think it is quite inevitable looking at where we're going in already. Female empowerment is a very strong word. I would say it's a buzzword today, okay, in all its good and bad sides. Just like greenwashing was in terms of, and still is, about sustainability. It takes that hype curve in these things to get the attention first, to raise awareness. It can be quite extreme on other ends. Me Too movement was very strong and healthy, still is, but at the same time, I have male mentors not wanting to mentor anymore because they don't want to be accused of ambiguous sexual harassment, and I get that. So I think we are on a trajectory going there already, but it is very slow, and I'm not sure if this is something we can force. One of the ways that decision makers and regulators can make it a little bit easier is, for instance, this, according to my research, families and kids just play such a big part of this. If male and women both have to take X amount of time off when you have kids, this already equals the playground a little bit. Regardless of what your gender is, if it's 1 year, 2 years, both are off, then it puts you more on equal ground. Okay.
Hi, Luing. My name is Katja. I'm the founder of an agency called Constellations International, based in Shanghai and Berlin. One of our key areas is sustainable city making. I'm always interested, how could we move from dialogue to more action between China and Europe, between Berlin and Shanghai? So my question to you is, if you could suggest a joint project for future urban living between Berlin and Shanghai, let's say, what would you suggest? Do you have any idea that you think this is something we could really act upon together?
That's a great question, thank you. Yes, we have a concept called urban innovation pockets, and this is for cities to use as test beds to test ideas in a smaller scale, per neighborhood or per building. And if it works and if it's viable, then you can scale things. And in Shanghai, mega cities like Shanghai, innovation happens. You cannot just innovate on a large city scale, right? You try from smaller things. And there's a lot of talk about smart cities, but for me, it's always about why do you want things to be smart? You know, you don't just want to slap digital layers on things. So that purpose on things in both here in Berlin and Shanghai, because both cities have different type of challenges, right? But the concept of pockets, when you pocket certain ideas, test them around. If they work, you scale them up. And if you could benchmark different things between these two cities, that would be wonderful, because Berlin and Shanghai both have amazing things that can be swapped.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much for your talk and your patience. So I will try to be very objective, because I think there's a problem from women. I have a question about the activity, not in a big crisis or circle like a city, but you personally. If you can tell something about projects where you were involved and you put these issues very concrete, and which results you had.
In gender.
In gender, industry, cultural, and future urban living sense.
Okay.
Just a practical way to use your experience and your thinking.
Okay.
In which examples could you give me, then I can look at this and learn about?
Okay, thank you. Very important as well. So, for instance, if we talk about, I've been in multiple negotiations, business negotiations between East and the West, and I would say Western Europe and China, where I've been in a role of an interpreter, but not really. What I mean is that you are in between two different languages, but actually you're between two different cultures. And this is not just to say that they're speaking Chinese and another language, but there's so many cultural layers behind. So I've been in situations where the Western party will say, okay, we move forward. And the Chinese side will not say no, but they will say, we will consider it. And I'll have to translate that into, you might want to consider something else. And also from the Western side being too sharp and saying no, that would just blow the Chinese side off. I would translate it into a lot softer, saying that you may want to consider something different here. So it's in my work, it's really nuanced communication between all different parties. In circularity and in future urban living, what I do very often in the business world is explaining that sustainability is actually not a trade-off, right? It's not a trade-off. If you want to be sustainable, it doesn't mean that you have to increase your costs and make everything more complicated. No, sustainability should be an inevitable result and an economic opportunity. So this is something that I push. For the environmentalist side, I don't need to say this because everyone's like, yes, great, climate change, circular economy, good thing. They get that. The business world doesn't understand it the same way, so need to really translate that into their language before they even find it interesting. So this is something that I do every day.
I think you all agree that we owe her a very, very big applause.